Hello everyone. Welcome to Speakers Bank, Our Voices, Our Views, the regular podcast edition. I'm here with my teammates, Annika, Catherine, Storm and Nathan. Hello everyone. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Catherine. It's nice to be here and to chat with some about I can't remember. Oh yeah, about International Day in Disability.
I'm Annika.
Hi everyone.
Sorry.
Hi everyone, it's Storm here. I'm looking forward to today's conversation. I think it's going to be very eye-opening and a very interesting way to talk about people with a disability.
Hi, I'm Nathan, and I think today's topic should be quite interesting, and it'd be interesting to get people's perspectives on it. And I think we should begin, I guess.
Okay. Well, as you said, we're going to speak a little bit about and ask some questions on the International Day for People with a Disability today. First question is, what do you think we need to implement for a more inclusive Australia in regards to, obviously, people with a disability? What do you guys think? You want to start off, Nathan, or?
Yeah, sure. I have a laundry list of things. One would be, I definitely think we need more priority towards things like disability parking, access ramps. There definitely needs to be a lot of reform around that. And even within the allied health sector, I think we really need to look around at other countries and see the different programs that have been implemented to help people with disabilities, implementing more things like conductive education, in order to help rehabilitate people and to try to get them back on track would be one thing that I would suggest.
Accessibility in all areas seems to be a big issue, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I think for me, it's about trying to improve on disability supports that we already have. For example, we need to be able to have more control of what we do and what we want in terms of our health and our well-being, and also what we think is right and appropriate for our own bodies, because there's too many grey areas still of what you can and what you cannot access for your own body. I think that's something that needs to be looked at with the NDIS, and they need to be have a crash course on what is the appropriate type of thing that they can use to help your body and what is not appropriate. Because I think it's wrong to say that one treatment is not covered by NDIS, so therefore you don't get the benefit, but then you know from a body perspective that it is the best treatment for you. For example, like osteotherapy that I use to treat my body, I find that very, very useful, but it's not covered by NDIS, so that there's a lot of leeway to go through that. I think the accessibility continues to be a main issue around local areas. Cafes are a massive problem, where if you've got a wheelchair or you've got some sort of like sticks or crutches, it is very difficult without a support worker or carer to access it. And all you want to do is just get a simple coffee or a meal. So it's very difficult. The way people use their language towards disability, that still needs a lot of work on as well. We're all about trying to include people, but sometimes I feel like we say it, but we don't actually do it. So, yeah, that needs to be included in terms of like schools and how they do it as well. I feel like that's still a massive problem. Just listening to Billy a couple of weeks ago when she said that her son had some bad experiences at school because they don't understand the condition, and they don't treat him with the right amount of respect and give him the honest sort of like treatment that every other student deserves. I think that also needs to be looked at as well. How do we get people's mindset thinking differently and not just think that this person has a disability, so we're just going to treat him a bit differently, but in a worst case scenario?
I think, like with gyms, I know that NDIS doesn't fund certain things within the gym, but I know with personal trainers that are training us people with disability for like one-on-one should be registered with NDIS for those people that can't afford to do the gym and wants to work out.
Definitely.
Because
Sorry, Catherine, were you saying that they are or they have to be, or you think they should be?
they should, or at least
Yeah.
some. I know there's one owner who just opened up called Listen to Your Body. He is registered and he has people within the special needs and he trains
That's
them.
awesome. But we need more of that.
But I benefit for that for my own health. Like if Storm joined, then it's affordable for us in those terms, and he knows how to work on your body's health and that, which is
And too often what I found is that when you go to the gym, you go to a PT, and this is what happened in the past, where they say that they can work your body, but you need a specialist person to do that for you. So an exercise physiologist is so important, and if they can get gym funding, they can also double your sessions. Instead of having once a week, what we do is for treatment is it's recommended to go at least twice a week to do gyms or physical activity. And that's what we've got to shoot for in the future, because we want to maintain our bodies and not make it any worse than what it already is.
It's very tricky with the NDIS. You really have to do your research and look into it and see what is what fits under their rules of what you can be funded for and what you can't be funded for. And unfortunately, like what you were talking about, Storm and Catherine, the gym, they don't fund that sort of outing. I mean, even as far as medication, I mean, you know, there might be an individual that needs medication once a month that might cost anywhere from $100 to $150, but that you can't put under the NDIS funding and be able to, you know, be able to claim it that way, which is unfortunate. So there's so many things that need to be looked at, but it's all a slow process, and everybody has to be on board to put in, to advocate for changes.
That's it.
And sometimes we fall into
from a carer's point of view, Billy, what do you think needs to be looked at as a disability sort of care format for people with disabilities? How do you think these can be improved?
Oh my gosh, I've got a huge list. There's so much. There's so much that can be improved. Look, even when you look at now, what the funding you get now and all the reporting and updated reports you need from all your therapists, it becomes very tricky because you can't even call it respite. I think we spoke about this before. So you can't say you need certain hours of respite because obviously the carer, example myself, needs that time out.
Yeah.
It's got to be worded in a way where it's all about the participant, meaning Philip. That's really made me think about a lot of things, because at the end of the day, it's not just about Philip. It's about Philip and all the other everything
Correct.
that branches off from Philip, including, you know, first and foremost, the immediate family members, and then the community that surrounds him, and those members in that, you know, close community that would surround him as well. That needs to change the way the funding is about that, because in the past, before NDIS came into it, you know, they did factor in, you know, the parents or the parents who are the carers or the siblings. You know, it was all looked at as a whole. It's not done. That's not done anymore. So that's one of the big changes I'd like to see.
And that can be a particular problem when you're married too, because the reality is my wife and I are essentially one person. So if even with regards to funding, I've even said to, you know, my support coordinator, realistically, what disability services and the NDIS need to do is have a separate section in my plan so that my wife can get things to look after herself in order to look after me, if that makes sense. So, for example, if a carer needed like a back brace or a wrist brace to assist, that should be included, because the NDIS looks at it and goes, well, it doesn't directly benefit you, but in reality, it actually does, because the less I need to have a formal carer, the better it is for me physically and mentally.
But even
but that's the thing I don't understand about it.
Sorry, Storm.
No, I'm just saying, like, that's the thing I don't understand about it. But like, they say that it's okay to want services, but when you say like gym or some sort of like specialist services, they sort of like get a bit confused, because they're like, but you're asking for a gym service that you can already pay for. But I go, well, it's not about payment. It's about getting the right people to look after me, and getting the right people to look after my body.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's why couldn't you go to the gym and have a gym membership and have somebody on board in that gym that actually specialises to help you out because of your physical ability or disability, where you want some of that training? Why shouldn't you be included in a gym where people without disabilities may go to? You see that really...
Because the way they see it, and especially when it comes to funding, is that they look at it, because I've inquired about this, and it's basically the way they see it is, if anyone would choose to go to a gym for health and fitness, they see it as an everyday expense, which is stupid, because with me, for example, I can't exercise at home or just go to a running track. So for me, it's either they fork out for physiotherapy in like an exercise physiologist studio, or they pay for a gym membership.
But a physiologist studio, if you're going, yes, if they fund that, that's okay, but that'll be what? Once a week or once a fortnight or once, whereas we've got an option to be amongst other people in your community in a gym. Why shouldn't, just because you have a disability, why shouldn't you be able to go to a gym as well and have that under your NDIS funding?
Absolutely. And
you know, it's nice to be included in the community, therefore be able to go to a gym. It's like when I, obviously quite a few years ago, I advocated for Philip to go to mainstream kinder. Just because he's going to early intervention, why can't he be amongst other kids in mainstream kinder for a few hours? And I had so much trouble getting a carer or a support for him. In the end, we got it. We got 6 hours a week, but why should he be in a mainstream kinder?
And the really frustrating thing about the whole gym membership thing, like I'm not much for like the loud music and all that, but the reality is, like, for example, my exercise physiologist per session charges me $166 per session, and that's for an hour. But the frustrating thing with that is when you look at the breakdown cost of like a gym membership, let's say I get a gym membership and it's say, I don't know, let's say it's $50 a month for the full package. The reality is I can then, you know, double or triple my sessions, and then you can get a PT, which is cheaper again than an exercise physiologist to go with you, or even a carer if they've got background in that sort of thing, and work out.
You see, what I would like to do is, and this is the ideal scenario, would be you go to your exercise physiologist for that one session a week, then you get to go to your own community gym, the one you always go to, and have an exercise physiologist with you there, and then make sure that the gym knows that there's an exercise physiologist first, because they're very picky on who can go into the gym and who can't, because they don't want clients to be stolen. I completely understand that. But then after that, make sure that the exercise physiologist can come with you, and once you get the permission, then you'll be like, okay, we're all good, and then we can go and do 2 to 3 times a week, which is what we are after. But the thing is, NDIS won't allow that because they think, oh, well, you're seeing an exercise physiologist, so why do we have to pay for an extra 2 sessions? And I'm thinking, it's not about why we're doing it, it's because I'm looking after my body.
And the real frustrating thing is, Storm, frustrating thing is they'll let you bring like a PT or an exercise physiologist to your own gym, but the thing that gets me is they won't pay for your membership. And why that frustrates me
that frustrates me too.
is because I've looked up, I think, well, my wife more so than me, but we've looked up, you know, what it would cost, say, a PT per session, and it might be like, I think from memory, one of them was around like $89 for an hour's session. Now, when you think about that, and what an exercise physiologist costs, my exercise physiologist costs $166 for one session.
Wow.
And then if I see a physio, the cost goes up to, I think it's around maybe 190 something. Now, my point being is that if you got a carer or a PT to go with you to a gym and they covered both, it would save the NDIS a lot of money. In fact, I remember a physio saying to me one day, and this is just roughly off the top of my head, but he said to me, on average, if the NDIS were willing to pay for people's gym memberships, they'd actually save themselves at least $500 a year. So they would actually save themselves. Yeah, and that's the thing. I like even when it comes to carers, that they don't. There must be some conspiracy somewhere, because they want to save money, but there's certain things that they'll make it very hard to fund. Like, take for example, I'll give you another example, like an assistance dog. Right, I can't have a human carer do any kind of personal care, but one thing that is technically available to me is the potential to get an assistance dog. Now, the NDIS makes that extremely hard to get, even though it would save the NDIS thousands of dollars a year, because you have a 24/7 companion that actually only costs, I think, a couple of $1,000 in maintenance every year, compared to a carer that might cost you $50,000 plus a year.
That's so true, because I looked into an assistance dog a few years ago for Philip as well, way before the NDIS came in. So I wasn't aware how NDIS works with assistance dogs now. That's interesting.
What I'm hearing, though, from all of this is like the same things we're talking about implementing for more inclusive Australia, the same challenges and barriers we often discuss, like transport, accessibility, funding, everything like that. So I was wondering, since we do focus a lot on the challenges and barriers, is there something about your disability that you consider a blessing?
Oh, for me, definitely when it comes to appreciating the things that we all take for granted, like, for example, just be able to get food on the table. That's something that I never take for granted, because I see a lot of people in the world that can't afford the basics like water, food, clothing, and things like that. So that in itself is a massive blessing, and we're so lucky to live in a great country like, you know, here, and I think that's a very blessed thing to have. Could it be improved? For sure, but there's a lot of other worse countries than what we are in at the moment. So that's definitely one thing I can take from it.
With me, I feel like I'm so independent. You don't think I would have a disability, but I do. And knowing the deep down, like if I was to do things on my own, I would struggle. So by applying for all of these things to help me be independent, like getting the companion card, getting the access travel pass, I am very lucky that I am eligible and to fight for those things, because they are hard to get, because verbally you might sound like there's nothing wrong with you, but mentally and intellectually you have needs that need to be supported. Without those things, people would struggle because if you went to a concert, like I wouldn't go out alone at night. I'm just not confident. So how I see it is I see things completely different from day and night. Yeah, so what is a blessing to me is being able to get those supports to help me do things with help.
To be so independent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know, and the good thing about me and this public speaking, it shows people awareness of people's needs. Like from last topic on, on the independence, whatever, it was not visible. So you can't see the person's disability. And, which, you know, and not judging them when they, you know what, yeah. And so
that's actually the theme for International Day for People with Disabilities this year. So the theme this year was not all disabilities are visible, like
yes,
what you're saying.
that was last year's as well.
Oh, did I grab the right ears on there? Was I looking at the right thing?
Because I did a talk last year about it, and that was my favourite topic, because that's what we face. A lot of people say, like, we shouldn't say to people, oh, you don't look like you have a disability, you look so independent to me. If you think about what their disability is and learn about it, people are happy to discuss about it. You know, and yeah. So
I think the problem with the society is that we tend to not look at the whole picture. When we see someone, we don't look at the whole picture, and we don't actually pay attention to what's going on. We're so worried about other things, and that when we meet in society, we're like, oh, so this person here, you know, she looks normal, but they haven't really looked at it properly. They haven't really
I think, though, Storm, where we need to be very, very careful with the invisible disability thing is now. So last year, I had a bit of an argument with someone on my local community Facebook page about this, because the reality is, and I do get that there are legitimate people that have invisible disabilities. I will not knock that for a second. My father-in-law has failed kidneys. Like, he's on dialysis, so I know that there are people with genuine medical conditions. But there are people that I have seen that will park in a disabled parking spot at a shopping centre, and we're talking, like, you know, older people, 60 and 70s, and they'll be driving a massive full drive, and this, you know, little old lady will hike up into a full drive like there's nothing wrong with it. And I look at, you know, that person, and they've taken the last disabled spot, and I'm saying to a person on Facebook, this happens to me all the time. You know, and she was like absolutely berating my wife and I said to her, okay, where are you when someone who, technically may only just qualify for a disability parking spot, takes the last, disabled parking spot, and I basically crawl through the shopping centre because my legs are so tired, and I've got to, walk an extra 5 meters because someone that broke a nail, decided that they needed that spot more than me. Like, again, I know that there are people with legitimate medical conditions, but I've also seen people that clearly don't need it and they might just scrape in, but rather than give that disabled parking spot to someone like me, they'll take it, and because they don't want to walk the extra meter or two.
Yeah, and because they are more interested in what they want to do, not what other people around them need help with.
Iteration. Look, actually, I do stand corrected, Catherine. You were right. That was last year's. I misread what I was reading the other day. This year's theme is leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world, which I think is a lot of what we covered in our first question. So sorry about that. Misinformation on my end.
Okay.
That's okay. It happens. It happens.
Nathan, was there anything that you want to share that you consider a blessing? I don't know if that's the word I was trying to think of.
I think one thing I, consider a blessing is that there are a lot of things that I, don't have to go through that I wouldn't otherwise be able to handle when I factor in, my potential autism and ADHD and PTSD, is the fact that I think, for example, I would really struggle with holding down a high pressure job. So the ability for me to not be forced to work is a blessing, I guess. The other thing I would say from a financial standpoint is, while money is very, very tight and that is an absolute curse, I also think that the ability to have not just things like the companion card and taxi cards, but getting concessions on things like your electricity, or getting, discounts at, certain stores, or given access to like those community run supermarkets where like they get like, discounted food from like food banks and things. I think that's definitely a blessing, because a lot of people, I think, take that for granted.
So we were talking about the leadership question, when we, Annika, and we were talking about what can we do post-COVID, and that's one of the questions that I talked to my friend about. I'm like, I'm a bit lost of what to do after COVID. Like, I don't really know the direction to go to. All I know is that we need to get our health and our physical health back on track first.
Yeah.
And then that from there should help you get the answer to what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I feel with COVID and the lockdowns, it's hard for everybody, but in particular, the people with special needs, especially if they don't process it as well as the mainstream mind.
Correct.
Like, it's really taken a lot of routine out of some people, especially on the spectrum, that, it really threw them out, and it's made things so much harder.
I agree, Catherine. I agree. It's taken time to get used to being in lockdown, and changing from the routine, and then now it's back to the routine that's taken away everything you've worked at to be able to endure being in lockdown.
Yeah.
I know that's a factor that I found as well with Philip and
me,
not being settled.
With me, like when they introduced the elbow greet, that's not normal for me. That's not normal for a lot of people with special needs, and even like in you guys as well, the mainstream feel like at church, but especially those with special needs, because they see it differently. Like when someone says, "Oh, hello," and they go, I'm like, I turn back. I just said I can't. I just you know, I just say, no, I can't. And I get a bit.
Makes you a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do they keep saying that this is going to be the new normal, things aren't going to go back to normal, so I guess it can be a bit unnerving and I don't know, for everyone trying to settle in.
It's just a lot of questions at the moment. I mean, I think Billy hit the nail on the head. It's just getting used to one routine, then you're coming out of it, then you got to find yourself again, and that finding or discovering yourself that you previously had is very, very difficult because people change. People's goals and aspirations are probably completely different pre-COVID to what they are now, and they've got to try to find some way of finding new goals and new things to look forward to. And I'm just so confused with what to do now. It's sort of like, yes, we're coming out of COVID, and then now what do I do? Like, I don't know the answer. I think a lot of people are in the same boat.
Yeah, it's left a lot of people.
Sorry for the bang on the door. Someone just walked out. Hope that wasn't disturbing.
See, another thing that was what the theme this year was leadership and participation. I think we covered a lot of that, like participation, Jim, getting to do the things you want to do. And
yeah, I think the leadership and participation comes from a group of people. It's not just people with disabilities. It comes from people that understand what a disability is and how to make their lives as best as they could possibly do and not make their lives any harder than what it already is.
And
I think that's
do that to help advocate for the things.
Yes, and that can help advocate for things and to be able to do things at the correct standard and not be so downgraded and to be not left out. I think that's what scares people with disabilities. I think when we move forward, yes, it's great that we're out of COVID, but we need to make sure that people with disabilities still think they're valued and loved and cared for. I think we've sort of forgotten that they've gone through a lot of trauma the last 2 years, and there needs to be something needs to be done because, you talk about businesses and you talk about people in the frontline work and all the other organisations and then people that have died. Well, we haven't talked much about their disability, their impact on what they've gone through the last 2 years. It's like we've sort of been left under the carpet a little bit, which is a bit disappointing.
Yes, I agree, Storm. I totally agree. It's been a long, hard road with the pandemic for those with a disability.
Yes.
And, we're not mentioned very often in this pandemic, except for when they have to vaccinate the vulnerable or those with a disability.
That was the only time, Billy. That was the only time.
That's what I mean. There was no, how is this community of those with a disability, whatever it may be, how are they coping? Let's get people out there to see how they're coping. There was none of that. I mean, people ask you, family members ask how you're coping, but what are you meant to say? Well, yes, I'm coping as best I can.
Yeah, you can't really say anything else, can you? Because there's nothing else to say.
That's right. And now everybody's opening up. We're all going back to COVID normal, as they keep saying. But again, nobody said how are people with a disability back to COVID normal? How are they going to cope getting out of all of this? No, it's not mentioned.
And let me say this, the disability community at the moment is a very scared community at the moment. Like they're very relieved that the COVID thing is supposedly over. We all think it's over. But at the moment, we're all scared and we're all unsure of what to do and how to act next. And we're not sure where to get the support.
Yeah, because going out into the community is a big thing as well. you know, as I'm in retail and I know that I'm not comfortable going amongst, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people. So those with a disability would have part of that same sort of feeling as well. I mean, what are you guys like? How do you feel about going in a crowded shopping centre? Even though COVID's not over, really, it's going to be around.
I've got to tell you, I'm very nervous, and I'm like, yeah, I've got my vaccine and everything, but like we've pointed out many times on this podcast, you can still get it. You can still get it, and you can still pass it on.
Mhm.
It's just the severe side effects you're not going to get. You're probably going to get a common cold. However, I do feel sorry for those people who choose to be unvaccinated and don't have those freedom options. And when you've got a disability on top of that, it makes life so much more difficult than it already is. So I can only imagine what they're going through at the moment too. And my sympathy goes out to those people because, you know, some of these rules, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yes, that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
The day that we could talk about all day.
Yeah, like when you said, "Oh, going to the shopping centre," like I'm still got the sanitizer in my bag,
yes.
and my
And
mum's still sanitising in the car, and we're
I
still doing the things, and everyone's like looking at us like weird. They're like, "Why are you doing that? Like, we don't need to do that." Like, I'm sorry, I'm doing it until we know, without a doubt.
Good habit though, anyway.
It's over.
You don't know. Question. I was just wondering, is there a way, do you ever celebrate International Day for people with disabilities, or the organisations you're part of, do they?
No,
No, I don't really see a lot of hype about it. Like, you don't really see on the news, oh, it's International Day of People with Disabilities that much. You might get a small mention, but that's about it. It's not, sadly, it's not a well-recognised thing in mainstream media, which I don't understand. Because when you look at the Royal Children's Hospital appeal, that is a well-recognised, you know, charity, and you know, things like that. But why isn't disability a recognised form? Like, you've got mental health awareness in November, that's been talked about. But disability, again, like we talked about many times, gets swept under the carpet.
Yeah.
I feel that in that terms, it is not recognised at all. It's kind of like the hidden thing compared to other organisations.
Well, then, I'm thinking for the last question in relation to all of this, if there was one message that you could share or a lesson you could teach, what would it be?
One lesson, or so, Annika, what was that?
Yeah, if there was one message you could share or one lesson you could teach, what would it be?
Life is hard, but you just got to make the most of what you've got.
Love it.
That's my message.
Sure.
Being accepting of the person you are, and keep on fighting for your ways to help you become more independent, and telling people, educating people about the differences in people.
Yeah, and I think the main message is to love yourself, to know that you are a good person, you are special in your own unique way.
Yeah.
And don't ever say to anyone, you can't do this, because you can do it. Because the only person stopping you from doing it is you. So that's how I always think about when I talk about my disability. So keep positive and keep being happy and be yourself. Don't change because other people want you to change.
Yeah.
I love meeting with you guys and catching up and talking about these things, because you always come with something insightful, always the energy you guys have, the information you share, it's always super insightful and helpful.
Thank you for having us today.
That's right. Oh, just lastly, Nathan, is there, oh, no, okay, Nathan's out again. I think that's it. Billy, did you want to wrap up?
Well, I'd just like to thank Catherine, Storm and Nathan for joining us this afternoon. And we're looking forward to the next topic in our next podcast. Thank you again, everybody. Thanks, Annika, Catherine, Storm.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
See
you.
again in a week or two.
Yes.
Have a good day, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye.